So, Master Hopkins and I, there were two congregations that originally came along in the Mayflower. There was the Leiden congregation of those in Holland. They were separatists of the English church. They did not want to be part of the church of King James and then later King Charles, since they objected to the idea that the king would be the head of a church. They didn't like the Pope either. They don't want the king either being the head of the church. So they went to Holland, and they lived in Holland some 13 years, so I'm told. But they didn't like the fact that their children were becoming Dutch, since they liked the fact that the Dutch would give them religious freedoms and the like, but they didn't want to become Dutch themselves. And they found that their children were beginning to change their ways and take more to money than God, as it were. And so then they eventually decided they wanted to find a new home for themselves, but they couldn't go back to England. And if they didn't like it in Holland, they weren't going to like it anywhere else. So they wanted to go on to somewhere, say here, the New World. And so they wanted to start a venture for that, but they didn't have enough money for it. So what they did is they got together some of their companions and allies to make a company, a joint stock company, which is very common in England. It's where everyone has shares in a company. And the idea was that they would make this company, they'd come to the New World, and they'd make some money off of it. And after a period of 7 years, they would divide the profit per their shares, and then they would get to live here, richer, which is quite well. However, they didn't have enough money, even with their allies and the like, to do that, so they sent out a call for those who were interested in such a venture. And so then Master Hopkins, his family, and I, Edward Doty, and another Edward Lister, who were servants of them, we signed on with that as better opportunity. Since we are all from the city of London, which is the greatest city in all of Christendom, 100,000 souls and the like. But the thing is, in London, many are flooding into London searching for work, since many of the country villages outside of London are getting destroyed. Since the lords who own that land, they want to make farms and things. They want to expand their plantations and their profits and the like, and they own the land. So they'll go to a village that's, say, about as big as this village here, and they'll tell everyone your village is gone, discontinued, and you'll all have to leave. And then they'll just destroy everything. They'll burn it all down. And so many come to London. So those who live in London, like myself, can't find work. And so we took on to this venture, and then we all came together originally on two boats, the Mayflower and the Speedwell. Have you heard of the Speedwell?
Yes.
You have. So you already know about this then. So we originally wanted to leave in summer, and we wanted to arrive in autumn, so then we can build our hoses in preparation for the winter, as it were. But we tried to go out, but we couldn't make it that far before the Speedwell said they were taking on water, and we had to turn back. And we turned back once, and then we got fixed it up in England again, and then we took off again, and then we had to turn around a second time for that. And we decided after that second time that it wasn't going to be worth it, because we just couldn't get the Speedwell to go that far, so we left it behind, and we wasted 3 months on that. And so we took, some people got disheartened, as it were, and they left, and some families stayed behind, and some others, they got aboard the Mayflower, 102 of us.
From the other boat.
102 in all, from those originally on the Mayflower and those on the Speedwell, and came together, so it was quite cramped. We had to leave behind some things, some tools, some animals and the like. And so then we came sailing over here, and it took us 66 days. But the journey wasn't actually as poor as you might think, since sometimes these ventures could be dangerous. But on the Mayflower, there are only a few events of note that I'd say. One of them was that our main beam cracked on the ship. For some reason, I'm not a mariner, I'm not sure why. Maybe the water was rocking it too much. And so what they did is they got a great iron screw from one of the shipmen, and then they screwed the mast back into place so it was like this, and they made it like this again. So they fixed that. That was another. Have you heard of John Holan before?
No.
He's one of our villagers here. I think you might meet him he's about these days. Well, he actually fell off the Mayflower. He fell off the boat. And he was up on the deck, and it did seal a ways. It tipped aside, and he fell right off the boat. And usually people drown that way, since not that many people in England necessarily know how to swim, as it were. And usually if you're out in the ocean anyway, when a boat's sailing, you can't stop it anyway. So even if you can swim, you're not going to swim faster than a boat can sail. But he managed to grab onto the topsail halyard, the big rope, and and he held on to it for dear life, and then the sailors noticed him in the water out there and they pulled him back up again as a great sign of God's providence, and he was
Yes.
preserved that way.
And just for my own the same curiosity, what did you hear about the New World, and what were you expecting when you came here?
A few of us, especially those who live in London, had heard a few things about the New World, as it were. We had heard from the Spaniards that if you go south enough, that they have gold to fill whole houses with, and that in the south of the Americas, you could go up from the fort over there, and you can go all the way to the ocean out there, and you could pave a path of gold on that way. And there was more silver than you could fill your arms with and the like.
That you had heard from the Spanish?
From the Spaniards. But there were English in Jamestown before, if you've ever heard of that place.
Yes.
And they looked for gold too, but they didn't find any gold. But what they decided to do is they wanted to farm tobacco, and they found tobacco grows quite well there. So we knew that there was some industry to be had there, and that there were also many naturals about. If you've met any of them before, down there they're Powhatans. Up here there's Pokanoket in Massachusetts and Narragansett.
And what was your trade in London?
Oh, I had no trade. Master Hopkins, he was of a trading sort back in England. He had some sort of a shop of some kind, and we're not quite certain with his family. But I was of a lower caste as you were than they were. I was born lower, just a labourer, son of a labourer is all. And so what I did is I took on servitude to Master Hopkins. And that's very common in England, actually, for somebody who is lower to take servitude unto another to raise up their own position. Since if I were low and he were middling, by becoming a servant, I also become an extension of him, so I was also middling.
And I have taped this. You have no problem if I share it, the video?
No, it is well. If that's your custom to do so, then you may.
Thank you.